What that affidavit say? A roommate saw what? Hey everybody, I'm Elise Bradley, and if you're liking this content and you want to see more of it, please hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and comment below. If you're liking it, hang out a little longer. I don't have a good intro, but I at least thought I should introduce myself. So, what's up? That's terrible. If you've been following this case, I'm just like mind blown. I can't even put into words how bizarre this whole case has been. And then now that the affidavit has been released, of course, there's probably a lot more to uncover, but since some of the documentations have been released, there's a lot of revelations that I just was not expecting at all. So if you're not aware of what we're talking about, have you been living under a rock? I'm just kidding. No, that's rude. Anyways, if you don't know what we're talking about Idaho murders. We are talking about the 4 killings that happened to 4 college students in Moscow, Idaho, back on November 13th of 2022. These murders were very vicious and they were violent. The murders involved Kaylee Gonzalez, who was 21 years old, Madison Mogan, that was 21 as well, Ethan Chapin, who was 20 years old, and Xana Kernodle, who was also 20. There were 2 other roommates in the house at the time that were unharmed. To kind of catch you up, you're going to have to watch previous videos of the case itself, because in this video, we are going to be talking about the suspect that they brought into custody on December 30th. They actually had a suspect probably since the end of November, but had been telling the public that they did not have anybody in mind or a suspect. To keep this suspect from realizing that they were very closely tracking him. The suspect that they have in custody is Bryan Kohberger. He is a PhD student at Washington State University in Pullman, Washington. He lived about, I think it was 15 miles away from Moscow, Idaho. And I think it's 15 miles, maybe it's 11. Anyways, in a short proximity to Moscow, Idaho. He's originally from Pennsylvania. He was receiving his PhD in criminology. So he was studying murders. And he actually studied at DeSales University undergraduate, closely with a professor that studied serial killers. Yep. That's Bryan. Bryan is 28 years old, and how the hell he knew these people, we do not know right now. We do not know the why, so we don't have the motive at the moment. But what we do have is a lot of things that came out in this affidavit that when Kohberger was originally arrested, we were unable as a public when he was arrested on December 30th to find out any of those, anything in the affidavits or documentation that had been presented in getting him arrested and having him appear in court, because where he was in Pennsylvania at the time until he was expedited to Idaho, these documentations could not be released. And obviously Bryan was eager to get back to Idaho because he wanted to see what was the probable cause of leading up to his arrest, as well as other information that they had found on him to make him a suspect. He needed that obviously to figure out his case, and what they've discovered is not looking really good. We are all supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, but moving forward, he was extradited back to Idaho, and he actually appeared in court today on January 5th. When he appeared in court today, basically going over what they had documented that they had found on Bryan, going over what he was being charged with, and bringing some revelations to the public that they could. They kept this under wraps for a reason. They wanted all the things that they needed to bring this guy to justice, lead to not only an arrest, but hopefully a conviction if he is the one that did this, which, like I said, I kind of think he's the one that did it. Let's talk about what they found. Start from the top. When he appeared in court today, they are charging him with 4 counts of murder. And with those 4 counts of murder, he's also being charged with burglary, and a felony to commit the murder through entering the house. I think that's what they said, felony to commit the murder. With those charges, that will lead to life sentence or death, because you can get the death penalty in the state of Idaho. I about said Idaho. They figured out it was Bryan through DNA evidence and surveillance footage. So the DNA evidence was because he had left some back at his crime scene. Let's first talk about how they located the DNA evidence. The knife used during the killings, which has not been recovered, was a K-bar knife, which is a military style knife. It's actually used in the Marine Corps. Not been recovered, and it comes with like a tan leather sheath on it. And with that tan leather sheath, he had actually left it around Madison Mogan in the room that her and Kaylee Gonzalez were sleeping in the night of the murders. And what they did was they had seen the car that he was in, the Hyundai Elantra, the white car. They saw it on different surveillance cameras coming in and out of the area during the night of the murders. The way that they discovered him was through the description that Dylan provided for them, because she did see him. So when they started looking around for this car, they narrowed it down by who fit that description, and that's what led them to Bryan Kohberger. When he headed back to Pennsylvania, which is where he's from originally, to Alsbrights, Pennsylvania, they had followed him and his dad, because his dad actually flew in to help him drive home from Washington to Pennsylvania for the Christmas break in the Hyundai Elantra car that the police had seen fleeing from the murder scene. And what they did was, when they got to Pennsylvania, they actually had dug through the father's trash to locate DNA that they could use to test to see if it was closely related to the DNA that they found on the knife sheath. And it was a 99.9998% match. So when that was discovered, they were able to warrant the arrest. Then they were able to take him into custody. That was really the big breakthrough for the case. The other thing that came out during this court hearing was the night of the murders were able to track his cell phone. And somebody that's in studying criminal justice, criminology, getting a PhD in it, probably knew that they were going to get pings off of cell towers that would link him to the scene of the crime. We all are in a decade where we know that cell phones are with us all the time. They are able to be tracked. We also do know that there are tons of cameras that are available. People now have cameras outside their homes. There's cameras outside of businesses. If you're trying to commit such a murder and you have a history of studying this, I mean, you're getting your PhD in it, you would think that he would know that he's going to be tracked at some point. He did know that. So the night of the murders, there's actually information that it's like around 2:47 a.m. his cell phone magically turns off, and he is actually moving his way into Moscow, Idaho, through surveillance videos. He then, after the murders, around like 4:30 a.m. or 4:50 or 4:40, I don't know the exact time, but around that time, the cell phone magically turns back on. So with his background, we can all probably safe to say that he turned it off himself. But they did notice it being turned off, and then they noticed the car coming in and out of the area. And I was going to give you a rundown on the timeline. So at 2:53 a.m., his car is seen moving into the Moscow area. And then at 3:29 a.m., he is seen kind of, I was about to say gallivanting around the neighborhood, but he is seen kind of driving around the neighborhood about 3 times. And then actually at 4 a.m., he is seen making like a 3-point turn around the neighborhood. And then actually at 4:20 a.m., he is seen fleeing. Okay, so at 9:12 a.m., actually it's the same day of the killings, which is seen back in Moscow at 9:12 a.m. because his cell phone pings. And then it's shown that he is leaving the area at 9:21 a.m. And this is before the 911 call had been made by the roommates, because they didn't make the phone call till noon that day. So if he's seen back in the area at around 9 a.m., he can't really say, oh, I was there because I'd heard about the murders and I was just trying to, check out the scene, gain some information, because nobody was aware that these murders had taken place yet. So he can't sit there in court and say, I was studying. I was studying. I'm a PhD major studying criminology. So I was just checking out the scene. He can't say that because no one knew about it. With all of that evidence, I don't know how he's going to be able to say, I am not guilty. Why were you around the area so much? I'm kind of going to be very curious where he's going to go with this. It just doesn't seem right, Bryan, while you're in the area so often. The next thing that happened in the affidavit that was revealed was more on the timeline of when everything happened and when it occurred. Well, it's early morning, really early. So Zaina and her boyfriend Ethan were at a frat party, and they were there till around 1:45 a.m. in the morning. And then Madison and Kaylee were out at the bars, and they arrived home around 2 a.m. The roommates were apparently home. The other two that did not go out with each other, they went out to different places. They were also home at the time that they initially said 12 a.m. they had arrived home, but it looks like it was more around 2 a.m. as well. We knew a little bit about Kaylee's timeline at the time, or recently, because her parents and sister had released that she was on her phone till around 3 a.m. making phone calls. So she was up pretty late, but it turns out Zaina was up a lot later than all of us thought. I thought, hey, she got home and probably fell asleep and then woke up to these murders occurring, but there was a lot more information that we were given. It turns out that Zaina had actually made a DoorDash delivery, and it was supposed to arrive at 4 a.m. her DoorDash delivery. And then it was actually seen on her phone. She was on TikTok till about 4:12 a.m. in the morning. So was she awake when this guy entered her room? I mean, she very well could have been awake, which is crazy. And I just can't even imagine if I was awake and I saw someone walk in my room and I don't know what to do, and I wouldn't know what to do. But I have this feeling that she was awake, or she was aware that somebody was in her room in the house and was present. Come to find out, Dylan Mortensen was one of the surviving roommates that was actually located on the same floor as Zaina. Zaina was on the second floor of the home, and Madison and Kaylee were on the third floor of the home. And Madison and Kaylee, like I said earlier, were found together, and Zaina and Ethan were bunking together on the second floor. The second floor had the sliding glass door, and I'm assuming that's where Bryan entered. I'm going to say Bryan entered. And that's where also the murder exited as well. So Dylan's room was actually, I'm assuming, across from Zaina's. And the first floor roommate was Bethany. Bethany was located on the first floor. At the time that everything was released in the media back on November 13th, you really didn't know where everyone was sleeping, but we all kind of gathered that the murderer had to have entered through the sliding glass door because he would have been able to park behind the house. And most people, if they saw how the house is located and where the back area is, you can park behind there, go through the a little wooded area, and then head through the sliding glass door. And if they didn't have a bar or anything down the sliding glass door, they're really easy to get into. If you have a sliding glass door, make sure you put a bar down and make sure it's really secure, because they are easy to shimmy up and unlatch. Anyways, I've been watching an investigator talk about where they probably were sleeping, because a lot of things were coming out at first, how did the roommates that survived not hear anything? That's what everyone kept telling us. There's no information that the roommates heard anything at the time of the crime. They don't know anything. They made the phone call at noon the next day, or it's technically the same day at noon. On one call that was made was one of the roommates, and they said that there was one of their roommates was unconscious. Like, everything about this case has been so bizarre and like didn't make sense, but like I get that they have to keep things so close knit, and so everything just was not making sense. But I was watching a video, and an investigator, our previous investigator, had mentioned like how the house was laid up. There are 2 bedrooms on the first floor, but one of the bedrooms on the right side looked too small for anyone to want to live in. And I was like, yeah, if I was a girl, I probably wouldn't want to live in that room either, to be honest. The other room to the left was a little bit bigger, so that's where Bethany was sleeping, now that we have more information out. And then the room above Bethany would have been Dylan's room, and the vacant room that was on the first floor, hope you're following, but I hope so, on the first floor that was too small, that room would have been below Zaina and Ethan's, where they were sleeping. And then the house has a second, or an addition made on it, so it's kind of an offset. So they added on like a kitchen, it looks like, and then another area, but that's the 3rd floor. The house is very oddly built because it has that addition on it. So you could enter through the front door at the base level, or you could enter in the 2nd floor if you really wanted to by going, it looked like they had like a fence around it, but it's easy to access the 1st floor and the 2nd floor. So at the time of the murders, you're thinking, well, maybe that if the 2 roommates were on the 1st floor, they didn't hear anything. But then the investigator's like, most likely somebody is actually sleeping on the 2nd floor across from Zaina, because the bedroom on the 1st floor just looks too small. And I was like, but that doesn't really make sense. But now it kind of makes sense now that we have the affidavit out, because one of the roommates, Dylan, did hear something. But at the time, we didn't know that. Let me just tell you the story. So Dylan actually has a timeline of when she heard noises starting. So I'm going to break down her timeline of what she heard and what she told the cops. So around 4 a.m., Dylan, the roommate that was asleep on the 2nd floor, heard what she thought was Kaylee Gonzalez playing with her dog. She didn't think anything of the noise. There was a second time that she heard something, like a short time later, she heard someone's voice that said, "There's someone here." And at the time, she thought it was Kaylee Gonzalez, but later with the police finding out that Zaina was on her cell phone watching TikTok until 4:12 a.m. in the morning, that it could have been Zaina that said someone's here. And when she heard that, she actually opened her door, peeked out, looked around, didn't see anything. So then she shut her door, went back into her room, and then she started to hear Zaina crying short time later. So then she goes to open the door again of her room. She looks around, she doesn't see anything. And I'm sure a part of her is starting to feel like a little scared. We all know that fear that you get over you. You're like, should I look? I don't know if I want to. I'm a little scared. So you like peek out your door, but you like don't want to peek out too much because you don't know what you're about to find. But then she shuts the door, and then she hears crying again, and she looks out the door, and she told police that she sees a tall man, she said around 5'10", like an all black attire covering like obviously his head, like very little ability to, like, his mouth was covered. I mean, just like probably his eyes were available. She said he had very bushy eyebrows. He was athletically built, but he wasn't like massively big. And he walks like this figure, like walks right past her and goes out through the sliding glass door. And all she could do at the time was just stand there frozen. And after the man exits, she locks herself in her room and she just stays there. So I was like watching a video of another investigator that said there is a possibility, you know, the biggest question is, why didn't he kill her? I mean, she blatantly saw him, but it's pitch dark probably. And the investigator made a point. Did he see her? Even though he walked past her, like how closely did he walk past her? Is, you know, was there a big distance? Was it dark Did he even notice that someone was standing there looking at him? Was he in a state of like just zooming in, like was he just gearing towards the door and just wasn't paying attention to his surroundings? Was he just focused on those 4 victims only? We don't really know. That's not been released. We just know that she's not being charged and she's like not a suspect and not linked. She said that she did not recognize him at all. And I think it's really hard because we all have these opinions. Like, my biggest question is, okay, you're in a state of shock in your room. You're not really sure what happened to your roommates, but you also probably don't want to go investigate because you're scared. But when you go into the state of shock, like, why did it take you to noon to make a phone call to the police? And there was other speculations that they called other people first to come to the scene, and then the police were called. I mean, all of that's not like concrete or in stone, because there's so much information out there and we're just really not sure what to believe. But that's like my biggest shock is like, why did you wait till noon to call the police? Like, why? And why was the phone call said, why did people say on this 911 call that it was an unconscious person? Like, my roommate's unconscious. Like, why was that said? We'd have no idea. I mean, it's so easy to form an opinion and be like, what was she thinking? You know what I mean? But then you have to remember, like, we all have these opinions when we're not involved in the situation, and we have to keep in mind that we don't know what we would do in that type of situation at all. We don't know how we're going to react. We don't know what we're going to do. And hopefully, which I'm sure there will be more information about the connection, because we still don't even have the 911 call. We really don't know what was said or how it was said. We don't know which roommate called. It sounds like Bethany didn't hear anything. The one on the first floor, was she the one that called? And was you know, Dylan in a state of shock that she was unable to like consciously move? Was she unconscious? Did she faint? I mean, it doesn't say that she did. I mean, but my whole point is that it's really easy to judge a situation when you haven't been in one. So let's not judge what we don't know. Let's wait for more information to come out, because these girls are, I'm 100% positive that like these girls are traumatized, the ones that are, survived. And I thought Dylan knew some information about the murders or of what happened, or she had information, because I've not said this, and I don't know if anyone said this actually, because I don't know if anyone noticed this, but after the murders happened, I started looking up all of the victims, and then I started looking up their roommates, and Dylan was actually, her account wasn't active at the time, like nothing. And I was like, there's just no way that this girl does not have social media. Because at one point, it looked like she was tagged in some stuff, but then it wasn't an active account. And eventually, when I went back and started looking at them again, she reactivated. So I'm assuming that she unactivated for a reason, because she knew some stuff. And now it's come out what she knew. So it all makes sense to me why she deactivated her accounts at one point. But it is just like mind-blowing that she was so close to the killer. He didn't hurt her. Why didn't he hurt her? Did he see her? Did he not see her? What happened to her in that state of shock? Why did it take till noon to make the phone call? What is on the 911 call? That is all the things that we have to kind of figure out before we can actually form an opinion. Actually, we don't even need to form an opinion. I don't know. But it's important for us not to pass judgment on this poor young girl. It is just insane that it's just crazy that she was so close to this person and she left unharmed by him. Or, this is my other theory, he saw her and was like, I'm tired, like I'm good. But something else I thought about, which is crazy, is that he had like a heroin addiction back in the day. Like, did he take something to be able to physically take down all of these 4 people in one night? That's just a random thought I had. I don't know. But man, he was on one, is all my point was. So I just know one thing about these roommates, those poor girls. I feel so bad for them. I don't know how you come back from this. They're going to need a lot of thoughts and prayers, and so are the families of these victims. I mean, it's just awful. It's just, I can't even imagine. Okay, this is important. I forgot to mention that the second time that Dylan heard crying, she also heard a man's voice that said, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." That's just the creepiest thing I've ever heard in my life. It's okay, I'm going to help you. Like, what are you helping? Ugh. And all I can see now is Bryan Kohberger's face, like saying, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." The last thing that they brought up during this court case was his Reddit post. His Reddit post that was talking about the emotions of how people feel when they commit a crime that he had posted a while back. So they brought that up, I think, to give more information that he was trying to look into the minds of a serial killer's minds or someone who's committed a murder. I think that they think is going to be really important in describing what type of person he is, and that maybe that is why he wanted to commit the murders, because he wanted to know what it felt like, since that was an interest of his. And also, I just think that he thought he was smarter and better than them, that he thought he could get away with this because of the background knowledge that he had. And come to find out, you know, just because you study things out of a book doesn't mean that you know more than people that have been working in the field for a lot longer. But the affidavit was about 19 pages long today, so they've got a lot of information on him. His family is standing behind him. His mom was very upset, but they are showing support and love for him at this time. I mean, as a parent, I can't even imagine thinking that my kid was capable of doing something like this. And it is really sad for them, because it's a hard pill to swallow to think your son could commit such a heinous crime. And apparently the way he committed this crime, I mean, he killed them in different ways, and it was brutal. It was brutal to the point that, like, one of the victims was completely unrecognizable. And it's just awful and so sad that these poor kids had to go through something like this. But one of the craziest things that came out is that Bryan has two sisters. Well, this isn't crazy, but this is just odd. So one of Bryan's sisters, actually, her name is Amanda. She was in a slasher movie back in 2011. And in the movie, there was students from a college that were out in the woods. They were brutally stabbed and murdered, which is just like really ironic that his sister starred in this movie. And then his other sister is actually a mental health therapist, and just kind of some weird connections there. Not that that has anything to do with it, but I wonder if he got some of his idea from this movie that his sister was in. And the other one, just being a mental health therapist, is just, it's just all interesting, the background that you're finding out about him. He's about to appear back in court, so there's even going to be more information put out there. But the biggest question now is why? What was his motive? I guess we'll find out soon. Okay, so I feel like this is important, so I'm going to tell it. I was like cutting the video and then looking back at articles and was like, okay, I just feel like I should add this. So during the killings on King Road, did release a security audio that stated that there was whimpering noises, the dog was barking, you could hear a loud thud. Those were things that this security camera picked up. All right, that's it. Now I'm officially done. I'm about to get ready to go out with some friends on a party bus. And I spent all day editing and I'm not ready and I need to get ready. But I'm getting ready now, so we're starting to get ready now. We are getting there. But everyone stay safe, stay alert. I hope y'all have a blessed and wonderful rest of your day or evening, whatever time frame you see this at. I love you all, and thank you for tuning in, okay? Have a good rest of your week. Bye.